everybody, I'm Kate Cass. Welcome to our edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about Stitch. Yes, I know it's not Stitch Day, but those of you with good memories might remember that I said I was going to do a video on all the movies every Stitch Day after my video on the original movie. You might have also noticed a lack of a Stitch Day video last year. Long story short, I got sick, I tried to record the video anyway, it sounded dreadful, so I put it off until now. I mean, I can release a Stitch-themed video before Stitch Day, but after? I don't think that's legal. So without further delay, let's get into the third Lilo and Stitch movie. Because even with a TV show running at the time, Lilo and Stitch was not safe from the barrage of direct-to-video sequels Disney was churning out in the 2000s. For there is yet another sequel that acts like it was the first, we'll clarify that in a sec, Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch. As Lilo gets ready to enter a hula competition, Stitch starts acting up again due to a glitch in his programming. As he slowly spirals out of control, Stitch has to prove that he's good to everyone and himself. Can the bonds of Ohana withstand these new obstacles, or is this enough to tear this newly found family apart forever? Alright, for the uninitiated, let me clear up some confusion as best I can. Stitch Has a Glitch released in August of 2005, right in the middle of when the Lilo and Stitch TV series was airing. In fact, the TV show was almost wrapping up when this came out. No joke, the Proud Family crossover aired the same week this released.
Shaka. Yeah, Shaka, I know.
But Stitch Has a Glitch acts as a more traditional sequel, so it's widely accepted that this movie takes place before Stitch the movie, which was released 2 years prior, and before the, at the time, ongoing TV show.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
Bit confusing when laying it all out, but I promise it's not too hard to follow. You can tell right away that this movie is set just weeks after the first film, as there's a heavy amount of dedication to everyone adjusting to their new lifestyles in this unconventional family unit. It's also much more grounded than future Stitch stories would be. If you wanted a story that centered more around the day-to-day life on Earth rather than wild alien adventures, this is definitely the movie for you. A good visual to set this movie apart from the series is that here, the dome they built on top of the house is essentially just a reconstruction of Lilo's old room. Even has wooden floors and everything. Unlike the colder, alien-like decor of the one in the TV show. Both versions are fine, it's just a matter of preference, but it's a good way to tell these stories apart in their approaches. Considering that, as much as I love space adventures, the eccentric domestic angle is one of my favorite things about Lilo and Stitch as a franchise, the events of this movie always puts a smile on my face no matter what part I'm watching. With maybe one exception, but we'll get to that later. However, there is one other very notable difference in this film. Like usual, every character has their voice actor reprising their roles. Even Jason Scott Lee returns as David, which is the only time he would do so, but there is one noticeable exception. For the first and only time, Lilo is not played by Daveigh Chase. Because Chase was so busy with the animated series, she reportedly suggested getting someone else to play Lilo here, which Disney agreed to as to not overwork this child actor. I know, I'm just as surprised as you are. So they cast Dakota Fanning. You might remember her as every little girl in an early 2000s movie. This could have been really jarring and off-putting, but honestly, Fanning does a really good job. There's a reason this kid was in everything, because she's a good actor. She even had a decent amount of voice acting experience at this point. She stands alongside the rest of the talented voice cast exceptionally well, and the performance doesn't feel out of place. She's really funny and obnoxious and thoughtful throughout. Everything Lilo should be. Really, the thing that keeps this movie going throughout the first act is just seeing how Lilo and Nani are adjusting to having the aliens as part of their everyday lives, and how Stitch, Jumba, and Pleakley acclimate to life on Earth. There's some fun antics with the debut of Aunt Pleakley and Uncle Jumba, and Pleakley getting his Earth knowledge from unreliable sources. Yeah, you thought the viewfinder was silly, now he's learning human relationships from lifestyle magazines. Also, as a side note, in this movie, Pleakley wears the sailor suit instead of the sundress he's more known for in the TV show. I kinda miss the show look, but I do find it charming that the sailor suit has a similar color scheme to his old Galactic Alliance uniform. I like details like that. Then there's Nani trying to rein in the chaos of hosting the aliens, while still trying to make them all feel like a family. The longer the franchise went on, the more Nani got pushed to the side for various reasons, and I have heard some fans express disappointment with that. Thankfully, that's not a problem here. She's not the main or even secondary focus, and her problems aren't nearly as desperate as they were the first time around, but it's clear that she's still trying to feel like a good guardian, but struggles to meet those expectations while keeping things under control. She had enough trouble wrangling in one chaotic family member, now she's got 3 more, and I don't think she's getting government assistance to house these guys since Cobra's notably absent. It is a good place to follow up from where things were last time. When it comes to Lilo Lilo and Stitch themselves, they are once again the heart and soul of the movie. Here they have this adorable best friend sibling dynamic. You can really tell he's taken to living like a human. They get up to some silly childish antics compared to what will happen later, and it's really endearing and cute to see this monster of destruction stand in attention with stuffed animals and build sandcastles for little girls. I think that's the kind of contrast that makes this franchise so memorable. It's amazing how different Stitch is from how he was in the original film, but is still recognizable as that beloved character. Lilo is more or less the same, but with Stitch around, she's definitely less lonely and prone to outrage. I've said this before in other videos, but I can never overstate how much just having one companion makes a difference, especially to someone like Lilo with unusual hobbies and interests. That said, she still faces difficulties. Her storyline in this movie has her dealing with the loss of her parents again, mainly her mom. When she hears that her mother was an amazing hula dancer and won a competition that she'll be competing in as well, she wants to win too. To prove that she can be like her despite her own insecurities and those around her who tell her she's not and never will be. And by people, I mean Myrtle.
You'll never be like your mom. Never.
Okay.
I know it's a long list, but this might be the most vicious thing Myrtle has ever said to Lilo. And there's something about Stitch just letting Lilo go at her that is too funny to me. Like, he tries to convince her to not cause trouble, but he knows when a line has been crossed, and sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. There's a reason you've probably seen this image floating around as a meme. Despite how brash and unafraid Lilo is to let her freak flag fly, deep down, she is a little kid who wants to be loved and accepted. She also lost her parents at a very young age, so there's a lot about who she is that they'll never get to see, and she'll always wonder what they thought if they did. I really like seeing that insecurity be wrapped up in Lilo's grief. What would her mom think of her? Would she expect her to be more like her? And can she live up to that? Something that really makes this movie work to me are very small, short, emotional beats that convey the great strength of those emotions. And the moment where Lilo can't see herself living up to her mother's legacy, only for Stitch to show her how much she really is like her mom, is one of those moments. But unfortunately, things aren't going to go smoothly because Stitch is dealing with a sudden problem of his own, which is where we get to the meaning behind the title, Stitch has a glitch. What does that mean? Okay, so when Jumbo created Stitch, the Galactic Federation raided his lab before he could charge his molecules and stabilize his form, meaning his body and mind are now going haywire. Let me tell you, 12-year-old me got way too excited to see this sequence showing Stitch's creation. I still think it's a really cool look at how Jumbo made Stitch, and continuity-wise, the story still holds up pretty well. There's been a lot added since, but it's a pretty solid timeline of events still, which is impressive. Speaking of the timeline, it's kind of crazy to think that technically this wasn't that long ago. Considering Jumbo was arrested right after Stitch was created, and it's been a non-stop set of events since, I'd be shocked if it's been more than a couple of months. In the grand scheme of things, it didn't take that long for Stitch's composition to become critical, forcing him into these manic episodes he can barely remember or control. As cute as domesticated Stitch is, if you miss the destructive little monster, the glitching moments provide just that, becoming a whirlwind of mayhem and destruction. It's a really solid story idea for a small follow-up sequel. It regresses Stitch in a way that enhances his character arc by giving him a struggle rather than hindering it. It offers some cool insight into Jumbo's work and Stitch's creation, and it leads to some truly incredible animation work. Seriously, these direct-to-video sequels often get flack for having rough animation, being off-model, or just plain looking bad, and while that is usually fair, I dare anyone to say that about Stitch Has a Glitch. Somehow, it is almost indistinguishable from the first Lilo and Stitch. I've actually seen people use screenshots and promotional material from this movie, mistaking it for stuff from the original film. That's how good it is. With the iconic watercolor backgrounds, characters staying remarkably on model with great expressions and fluid movements, keeping the same color palette from the original movie compared to the brighter, more saturated color choices they'll get going forward, and just some truly incredible shots and color choices that evoke the emotion of a scene almost as well as a theatrical film. That's no small feat, and the more I look at it, the more impressed I am by it. Not to mention the sporadic moments that occur when Stitch starts glitching in and out. It all looks amazing. However, the most glaring issue with this movie, and unfortunately it's a big one, is that Jumbo and Pleakley don't tell the rest of the family what's going on with Stitch. Not even Stitch. I'm usually fine with the reasoning of, if they did this, then there wouldn't be a story, because people don't make the most logical decisions. They don't think of the most reasonable answer, and I feel like if you want to tell a story that's very human, you gotta be true to that. Sometimes there's questionable motives, and that is okay. That is how conflict happens. And yeah, if Stitch and the others knew what was wrong with him, then there'd be no story. But the fact that Jumba and Pleakley are actively keeping this a secret for no discernible reason is incredibly distracting. Especially when the problem they're not telling them about is causing such strife, and oh yeah, is slowly killing Stitch. I take a lame excuse. I can work with that. Make it so Jumba doesn't want to tell them because he's worried he can't fix it or is ashamed of a failure in his creation. Make it so Pleakley has to tell them but gets distracted by helping David woo Nani, which would have given the lamest side plot in the movie more purpose, and Jumba is holed up in a ship trying to come up with a solution and doesn't realize no one knows what's happening. But there's nothing! It's so infuriating. But to play writer's advocate, as I do, it might play into this recurring element throughout the film that I noticed. That everyone is so caught up in their own problems that they aren't dealing with things the way a family should, together, by communicating and working to help each other out. Nani is so focused on balancing her work and family life that she can't be there emotionally for the others as much as they need. Lilo is so caught up in creating the perfect hula routine and trying to be like her mom that she just thinks Stitch is acting up and doesn't realize something is wrong with him. Jumba is so caught up in fixing Stitch that he doesn't think to mention what's wrong to anyone, and Stitch is so worried about turning bad again that he can't be there for Lilo, no matter how much he wants to be. As much as everyone here has a better life being part of each other's lives, their separate problems and how much they're not coming together to resolve them is creating a lot of the tension and complications in the film. It creates a lot of drama that does feel a bit predictable and cliche, but damn, it just has those moments that make the emotion at the heart of it all a bit stronger, that you can push past the parts that are kinda contrived. But in between all the chaos and confusion and personal struggles, there are just as many wonderful moments between the characters. I ragged on the subplot with David and Pleakley a minute ago, but it's harmless enough and doesn't take up much time. I'm always on board with Pleakley antics, and it is funny how amused Nani is by the attempts.
Are you jealous?
No.
Living on Earth with Stitch seems to have made Jumba more attached to him too. They don't interact much at all, but he speaks about him much more affectionately compared to how cold and factual he used to be towards him. He even calls him Stitch instead of 626, which he has never done before, and will never do again, but I get what they were going for, even if it does sound a little weird coming from him. Lilo and Nani eventually collide and get into an argument, but I thought it was kind of nice that they just can't keep it up. It transitions into this really sweet scene where they wind up relaxing and assuring each other, even in a small way, that they're trying their best, and that's all that matters. As for Lilo and Stitch, for most of the movie, they're okay. Even with Stitch's glitches causing problems, Lilo mostly just gets annoyed for a while. They're still an inseparable team trying to come up with the perfect inspiration for Lilo's hula, which they eventually find in the legend of the Hawaiian goddess Hi'iaka. I actually researched this legend a bit, and there are some interesting things about this story that they chose to inspire Lilo. First off, Hi'iaka is a pretty good choice for the subject of Lilo's hula, as Hi'iaka is the patron goddess of hula, as well as sorcery and medicine, possibly due to her discovered powers of healing. The story of Hi'iaka and Lohiau, which Stitch's a Glitch is incorporating, is the most well-known legend surrounding Hi'iaka. Now, like a lot of legends, there are a few different versions of the story and its outcome, but even taking that into account, they did fudge some of the details in this movie. The biggest is that there's no mention of Hi'iaka's actual best friend, Hapoe, who was the one killed by lava. Lohiau seemed to be more like a fetch quest, and how strong their relationship became really depends on which version of the legend you read. Like I said, there are a few versions, and in my whole hour of research, I couldn't find out what the referred to definitive version is. But even though they altered some of the details, and to be fair, I could be getting some stuff wrong, it's neat to see them incorporate more of Hawaiian culture into the story, and as such an essential part of the story too. I mean, hey, it's better than what Myrtle did. However, as Stitch's glitching episodes start causing problems, including almost getting the rest of Lilo's class hurt at rehearsals, tensions get high. At first, it's actually kind of funny because it devolves into this bickering and shoving that is just too relatable to anyone who has a sibling.
You're touching me!
Not touching.
Touching me!
It's free air. Ew! I have dog germs! Get hot water! Get some disinfectant! Get some iodine!
But gets serious quickly, and Stitch starts having doubts. When the movie began, Stitch was worried about turning bad again, but Lilo assures him that he's as good as he can be. They even have a cute callback where they replace the badness level chart with a goodness one. It becomes a good visual as the movie goes on to show how much worse Stitch is getting, and as far as they know, Stitch is just reverting back to how he used to be. Maybe it's because Stitch's vocabulary is so limited and they have to get creative, but the moments of Stitch dealing with the possibility that he could be turning bad again just breaks my heart. This moment in particular in the treehouse is amazing.
That's good. That's good now.
It's so simple, but it says so much about how Stitch is happy with how he's changed, and how scared he is that his behavior lately means that he never did change, never can, and at some point he's going to hurt the ones he loves just because deep down, that's what he is. He wants to be good so badly, it's tearing him apart inside. Now, I personally don't think Stitch should be too worried about turning bad again, not just because I'm the audience and I actually know what's wrong, but because, not to be morbid or anything, but we all know Stitch could have taken on both Lilo and Nani without lifting a finger here, and yet he's getting tossed around like a rag doll. But that doesn't mean he's incapable of hurting them. This might be one of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire franchise, and that is really saying something. Stitch's worries are affirmed, his nightmares are realized, he's officially gone too far and doesn't even realize it's not his fault. It breaks something in him. The expressions are devastating, and the voice acting is exceptional at conveying the weight of this moment with few words. The only good thing to come from it is that it finally gets everyone on the same page. Suddenly, Lilo forgets the performance to do everything she can to see that Stitch is okay. No matter what she's thought of him lately, she knows that's a line he'd never cross, and that it means Stitch needs help. All this time, she's been trying to make the family she lost proud, while forgetting to look out for the family she's gained. But once the danger is clear, she remembers what's important and focuses on that, bringing everyone together to help him as everyone, besides Stitch, is finally filled in on what's going on.
Something's wrong with Stitch.
It's not his fault. He's malfunctioning.
Things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
And God, the next few minutes are just fraught with emotion. They are desperate, and it's so effective at getting across how dire the situation is. I cannot stress enough how good the voice acting is in this movie, especially as it becomes more ambiguous if Stitch will pull through. And for a moment, a very long moment, it seems like the answer is no. When I realized I was going to get around to reviewing this movie, I knew this was going to be the toughest part for me to tackle. This scene, where it seems like Stitch is gone, is so absolutely devastating, but I feel like I'm going to have a hard time explaining why. Because it really shouldn't work. When this movie came out, I was old enough to realize that Stitch obviously wasn't going to die because this clearly took place before the TV show. And yet, it was such a hard scene for me to watch. I was bawling my eyes out, and even now, whenever I can manage to sit down and watch it, it gets me choked up. I'm probably getting tears in my eyes editing this. So, why is that? Well, looking closer at it, I do think it's easy as a cynical viewer to forget how quickly you can get caught up in the drama if the characters believe it. No matter what your better judgment might tell you, if that is their reality for long enough, people will feel it. This lasts for maybe a minute, but they really hold on it. Soak in the grief and tragedy of this before Stitch miraculously, yet inevitably, is brought back to life. I have seen some people call this ending contrived, and on paper, it kinda is. Stitch is revived through seemingly no possible means other than Lilo's heartfelt speech reviving him. I understand why people would feel that way, because there is no explanation, and that's tougher to swallow in a sci-fi series, especially when they have the nerve to add this line.
How is it possible?
It's not.
But I'm more forgiving, not just because I'm a sucker and I love a happy ending, but because I think it works thematically. For one, this was foreshadowed with how their telling of the legend of Hiiaka is similar to what happens here, and also that this family has been so distant emotionally through the whole movie, so caught up in their own problems, that things are only mended once they come together. I don't think it quite qualifies as a deus ex machina, but I could see some people calling it that, and there's only so much I can dispute it. But to me, if it works emotionally, family, they can do almost anything they want to get there. And if you want a logical solution, you can say the effects of the fusion chamber just took a while to kick in. There you go, I fixed it for you, you're welcome. With that, everyone is reunited and celebrates by performing Lilo's hula together. And not to keep repeating myself, but this is one of my favorite scenes in the franchise. It's a lovely turn on what Lilo's been after this whole time, making her family proud, and it's nice to see the whole newfound family so in sync in a way. Timeline-wise, it's probably the first time these six feel like a close-knit family, and like most of this movie, it warms my heart every time. Overall, Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch isn't perfect, but it's probably way better than it should be. For a while, I felt like it got overlooked when talking about the Disney direct-to-video sequels, but over the years, I've seen more people ranking it high on lists of the best, which I couldn't be happier about because it absolutely deserves it. If it wasn't for the fact that Lilo and Stitch became such a big franchise, this would feel like an epilogue. The first movie ends with a lot of lost people coming together under the same roof, and this is what the result is. Giving us a smaller story that barely asks for an hour of your time, and makes the most of it for fun domestic antics and strong emotional drama. There are points where the conflict can feel petty, forced, or cliche, but the overall story doesn't get dragged down too much by that. Like I said, friends and family are few and far between with this group, so they don't really know how to be a part of one yet. This movie is all about everyone involved learning that and just how much they need each other, with the thing that brought them all together, Stitch, at the heart of it all. The voice work is a home run as always, there's some great music, the animation is probably some of the most impressive work of the Disney direct-to-video sequels, and the emotional beats hit me hard in a way that's almost indescribable. So any movie that can pull that off is doing something right. This movie just proves that this is a great group of characters, the kind that are so eccentric and different, but work so perfectly together that you can put them in the most domestic situations and it would still be very entertaining. The fact that Stitch Has a Glitch released after the Lilo and Stitch series have been on for quite some time proves that. There are too many great adventures to be had with this group. In fact, this movie is often bundled with a short called The Origins of Stitch, which is a sort of after-the-fact prequel to the events that led to the discovery of the other 625 experiments. There are even experiments featured that hadn't been on the show yet. I'm making this timeline more complicated than it is. The point is, with how much was going on with Lilo and Stitch, Stitch Has a Glitch really shouldn't exist at all, but I'm so glad it does. It is yet another amazing adventure with this unlikely pair, with even more to come from them in the future. So, it feels like a shame to wait a whole other year to talk more about it, doesn't it? That's right, this year we're gonna do a double feature of videos. Join me on Stitch Day officially as we close out our discussion on the movies by reviewing the one that acts as the series finale, Leroy and Stitch. I'll see you guys then. Thanks for watching, everyone. Definitely let me know how you thought of Stitch Has a Glitch in the comments below. That's why the series is called Let's Talk About. I want to give a very special thanks to my patrons who help support my content, including Jinx Productions and Wait in the Wings. If you'd like to join these fine people in supporting my content while getting cool exclusive perks, you can check out my Patreon page at the link in the description, as well as my other social media if you'd like to check any of those. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you guys again on Stitch Day.